the last place champion. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Alex Martinez slumped lower in his seat, wishing he could dissolve into the graffiti-scarred desk beneath him. Ms. Rodriguez's heels clicked against the linoleum floor with the steady rhythm of an executioner's approach, each step bringing another graded math test closer to its owner. The air in the classroom felt thick with tension, weighted by the collective anxiety of 30 sophomores awaiting their fates. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs as Ms. Rodriguez placed test papers face down on each desk. He could tell from her lingering glance that his results hadn't improved. When she finally reached his desk in the back corner, his self-imposed exile, the paper seemed to fall in slow motion. As it landed, he caught a glimpse of the angry red marks bleeding through the thin sheet. With trembling fingers, he turned the paper over. The 43% scrawled across the top wasn't just a number, it was a sentence. A conviction. An identity he never wanted, but somehow couldn't escape. Beside the score, Ms. Rodriguez had written in her neat teacher's hand, "Please see me after class. We need to talk." "This isn't me," he whispered, his voice catching in his throat. The words felt hollow, like echoes from a different life. He could still remember being 9 years old, proudly showing his mom the gold stars on his multiplication tests, the way her eyes would light up with pride. Back then, numbers had been his friends, each equation a puzzle waiting to be solved. Now, at 16, they looked like alien hieroglyphics, mocking him from every page. Around him, the usual post-test chorus began. Celebrations from the front rows where the smart kids sat, groans and whispered comparisons from the middle, and the resigned silence from the back. His territory. This was his third failed test this semester, and October's leaves had barely started to turn. That evening, Alex sat cross-legged on his bed, his phone propping itself against his knees as he tried to lose himself in basketball highlights. The Lakers versus Celtics game from '85, Jordan's famous flu game. Anything to forget the weight of that 43% sitting in his backpack like a brick. But the algorithm had other plans. It suggested an interview with Marcus Thompson, his favorite current player. Alex's finger hesitated over the thumbnail. He usually skipped interviews, preferring the pure escape of watching impossible shots and perfect plays. Something made him click this time. Thompson sat in a simple chair, his 6'4" frame somehow making it look small. "You know, everyone sees me now and assumes this was natural," he was saying, gesturing to the championship rings on his fingers. "They don't see the kid who was picked last for every playground game, the one who couldn't make a layup to save his life." Alex's thumb froze over the screen, his planned swipe to the next video forgotten. "I wasn't naturally talented," Thompson continued, leaning forward intensely. "I was the last pick for every team, but I studied the game like it was science. I broke down each movement into small parts and mastered them one at a time. Shooting? That wasn't one skill, it was footwork, arm position, release point, follow-through. I spent 3 months just working on my elbow alignment before I even thought about releasing the ball." Something clicked in Alex's mind, a key turning in a lock he didn't know existed. He glanced at his desk where his math textbook lay buried under a pile of comic books and snack wrappers. For the first time in months, he felt a stirring of hope. Or maybe it was determination. Pushing aside the phone, he retrieved the textbook and his failed test. Instead of trying to understand everything at once, he focused on the first problem he'd gotten wrong. Quadratic equations. He broke it down like Thompson had described breaking down his shot, identifying the parts, understanding what each symbol meant, learning the steps, one at a time. The clock on his wall ticked past midnight as he worked through problem after problem. His mom poked her head in once, surprise and concern mixing on her face, but something in his focused expression made her withdraw without speaking. By the time exhaustion forced him to stop, his notebook was filled with practice problems, each one a little better than the last. The next morning, Alex did something that shocked even himself. As his classmates filed out after the bell, he remained seated, his heart racing faster than it had during any basketball game. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said, his voice barely rising above a whisper, "I want to understand where I went wrong." The surprise on her face quickly melted into something warmer. "About time, Mr. Martinez," she said, pulling up a chair. "I've been waiting all semester for you to ask." For the next 45 minutes, she worked through his test with him, not just pointing out mistakes, but helping him understand the reasoning behind each step. That evening, Alex created a training schedule that would have made Coach Carter proud. He divided each math concept into fundamental skills, just like Thompson had broken down his shooting form. Algebra became his court, equations his plays to master. He recorded himself solving problems on his phone, then watched the recordings to spot his mistakes, the same way he analyzed game footage. He discovered online math forums and began participating in discussions, first asking questions, then, increasingly, helping others who were struggling. Each explanation he gave strengthened his own understanding, like teaching a teammate a new play. His next test came back with a 58%, still failing, but the improvement was undeniable. Instead of hiding the grade, he analyzed every mistake with the same intensity he used to study playoff games. By December, that 58% had climbed to a 72%. His classmates began to notice not just his improving grades, but the way he attacked each problem with confidence. "How do you do it?" Ramon, one of his basketball teammates, asked after class one day. "You used to be worse than me at this stuff." Alex smiled, remembering Thompson's words. "Want me to show you?" That conversation led to regular study groups in the library, where Alex found that teaching others helped him master the concepts even more deeply. When the semester ended, Alex stared at his final exam score in disbelief, 89%. Ms. Rodriguez had written beneath it, "Now this is you." But the number, impressive as it was, wasn't the real victory. The true triumph was in discovering that success wasn't about natural talent or being good at math. It was about approaching each challenge systematically, breaking it down into manageable pieces, and never giving up. Years later, Dr. Alexander Martinez stood before his own mathematics class at the same high school where his journey had begun. On the first day of each semester, he would tell his students, "The most valuable lesson isn't in this textbook. It's learning that being bad at something is just the first step to becoming good at it. Every champion starts in last place at something." And then, he would tell them his story, watching their eyes light up as they recognized themselves in that struggling sophomore who discovered that the path to success wasn't about where you start, but how willing you are to break down your challenges and face them one step at a time. On his desk, framed next to his teaching credentials, sat that old test with its glaring 43%, a reminder that every ending depends on where you choose to begin your story.